Now on NTV Let's Talk tonight, we are looking at teenage pregnancy. According to the United Nations Population Fund, 95% of births to adolescents occur in developing countries, and about 19% of young women in developing countries become pregnant before the age of 18. The UNFPA recently launched its 2013 State of World Population Report that extensively looks at the challenge of adolescent pregnancy. And to look at the extent of this problem in Uganda, I am joined by the UNFPA Assistant Representative, Dr. Wilfred Ochan, and Dr. Sabrina Chitaka, a pediatrician and senior lecturer of pediatrics and adolescent medicine at the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at Makerere University College of Health Sciences. Quite a mouthful there, Dr. Sabrina, but you're welcome to NTV Let's Talk. And we'll jump right into it with my first question. What is the magnitude of this problem in Uganda? And we'll start with you, Dr. Ochan.
Thank you very much. Teenage pregnancy is quite a problem in Uganda. Currently, out of every 100 young girls aged 15 to 19 years, 24 are pregnant. Now that is a big burden for a country because there's implication on health, on education, on women's empowerment, and how this in turn affect development in the whole country. But of course, even a single pregnancy of a young girl is a tragedy to the girl and to the family, and that must be prevented.
And how did we get here?
Actually, we've been working hard to bring down the statistics. Remember, in 1995, we had about 43 out of every 100 girls in that age group being pregnant. We've dropped to about 25 by 2006, but we've stagnated between 2006 and 2011 at 24% of these girls getting pregnant at any single time. But we also know that not all carry equal risk of getting pregnant. We know that the rural are most affected, twice actually as much as the urban. We know that the uneducated are more affected than those who are educated, and we also know that the poorer are much more affected. But again, also if you look at different religious grouping, we see that the Muslim has a higher percentage of 29% compared maybe to Anglicans at 22%. So the problem is big, it cuts across the society, and everybody needs to do something at every level.
Very interesting statistics. Dr. Sabrina, how adequately prepared are young people for reproductive and sexual lives?
You know, young people need to delay their age of sexual debut. One reason is if a girl becomes pregnant between the age of 15 and 19, she is not yet ready to be a mother. She is still growing up. She is still a child on her own. The risks of losing that baby are higher for a girl who becomes pregnant at that age. And on top of that, she stands another risk of getting sexually transmitted infections, including getting HIV. So for a girl who becomes pregnant between 15 and 19, she stands a risk of suffering when she becomes an adult because she doesn't have a job. She's a burden to her family and a burden to the society.
And maybe just to chip in a little bit, is that actually the traditional system that used to prepare young girls and young boys about issues of sexuality, parenthood, and all that, I've seen kind of died. And then you find that these young people tend to learn from each other, unfortunately, from those who are also not well prepared. So then it brings a big question to say that how well are they prepared? To a large extent, they're not prepared. They don't know so many things about themselves, their body, the implication of sex in terms of pregnancy, STI, HIV, like you say, even the risk of getting pregnant and related sequelae, abortion, maternal death, all those they don't know. So what we then need to do is to start seeing how do we reach our young people with the right information for the right age so that we prepare them better. And school education, especially with universal primary education, universal secondary education, we have seen huge enrollment of pupils and students into school, presents a huge opportunity for Uganda to start addressing this issue by integrating sexuality education within the school curriculum.
But still, I'd like to say that who are the perpetrators of this? Who gets these girls pregnant? Indeed, they are the boys of their same age, but also older men. So there's cross-generational relationships, but also teenage boys getting the teenage girls pregnant. The boy has a chance to go back to school, but the poor girl, because she's carrying a baby, she has no chance to go back to school. And yet, the father, you know, the teenage father has gone back to school. So
it's interesting that you actually say that, because I really need to understand, where do the boys and men come in as partners in terms of addressing this challenge?
Exactly. So much as we continue to address the girls and tell them to be careful, don't be touched here, don't be touched there, we should also be telling the little boys and the teenagers out there, they are not yet ready to become fathers.
But maybe to also just add on what Dr. Sabina is saying, by saying how well are the girls prepared, we tend to shift the whole burden and blame on the girls.
To the girls.
Exactly.
But these girls are being influenced by circumstances and situation in which they find themselves. To a large extent, most of the factors that lead them to get pregnant are outside their control and outside their domain.
In fact, the pregnancy thing is usually blamed on the girl and on her mother, you know, and yet in fact both parents should be taking care of this situation together. The people who take care of these girls, the school teachers, sometimes are the perpetrators. So everybody needs to come in and work as a team, and we as the health sector should do our part. We should be able to advise these girls to use contraception, to delay the age of sexual debut, and really make sure that they become pregnant when they are ready.
Let's look a little bit in detail at how well this particular group, the young girls, are empowered to address this challenge. Because Dr. Ochan said, he mentioned that the most at risk are those who are not very educated,
in the rural
areas, and those who are the poorer ones. So
religions.
How are they being empowered to actually deal with this challenge?
Shanda, let's look at it from two angles. The first angle that for us to prevent teenage pregnancy in this group and the whole of the adolescent age group, we need to, one, prevent sex or reduce the risk of sex. Two, promote use of contraception so that it will lead to prevention of pregnancy. And then thirdly, do all this. But for us to do this, then we need to look at what then drives people into sex.
But Dr. Ochan,
how do you prevent that? So even just if you could allow, you need to look at then, one, the common factor leading to teenage pregnancy is early marriage. Actually, I shouldn't even call it early marriage. That is sanitizing an immoral and an illegal act. Because by law of Uganda, sex below 18 years of age is illegal. So I would rather say forced child marriage needs to be looked at across cultures and across systems.
Do you have some statistics for that specifically in Uganda?
Yes, actually in Uganda by age 18 years of age, literally 60% of the girls are married.
In this day and age?
In this country.
Is that marriage or forced marriage?
That's what I'm
forced
calling
marriage. And actually our
marriage.
constitution even calls it defilement.
Exactly.
But the trouble is the families out there protect defilement and actually condone it sometimes. So they will brush around it and call it marriage, and the mom may be given 50,000 shillings to sell off her daughter, who is 15, to go into this marriage.
Because of poverty.
Because of poverty.
The issue is then to look at how do we bring on board the cultural institutions who are custodian of marriage, especially in rural areas, to start addressing this issue within the cultural domain and structures so that this is prevented. We know in Toro, for example, Toro came up with a bylaw that about any marriage below 18 years of age. And how they enforced that was that if you went to marry there, you needed to get the certificate. But for them to sign the certificate, the person, the chief who should sign it, should first verify that the girl has reached 18 years of age. Okay? So that is one way of making sure that the cultural institutions can come on board and actually put an end to this vice. Families need to be mobilized that marrying a child at that age is illegal and is inappropriate. And that also needs to be addressed across, and of course enforcement of the laws of defilement, which
but
is
I also, in addition,
implemented well.
You're right, but we also need to empower these young girls. We need to let the girls know that it is their right to delay the age of sexual debut.
Absolutely.
It is their right to go through school and become, you know, important people in the country.
Okay.
So by empowering them with knowledge so that they make their own choices is going to take us a long way. And where does this empowerment come from? It comes right from the time we start to speak to our children about sex and sexuality. The girls need to know that when they indulge in sexual activity, yes, they can become pregnant. They should know where to go if somebody is enticing them into becoming sexually active.
Let's look at the issue of access to reproductive health services. Do adolescents have access to reproductive health services? And that goes to you, Dr. Sabrina, very specifically.
I do know that the Ministry of Health has done a lot to promote adolescent corners We at Makerere University have started an adolescent clinic that is wholesome and addresses the issues of adolescents in general. But this is not cross-country.
Okay.
And it hurts me to note that adolescents don't know where to go if they need a health service.
Maybe just to chip onto that, also if you look at the national statistics, because the Ministry of Health is promoting a very good model, what we call the 3-point access model, where young people should get health services from public health facilities, in the school, what we call the college, and in the community. Implementation becomes an issue that we need to enforce across the country, because currently only 5% of public health facilities in the country have youth-friendly corners. 5%.
5% out of the 155,000.
Access for young people. But of course, the strategic way of doing it is to enroll and make sure that every public health facility has a youth-friendly corner. But more importantly, to make sure that we link our schools to public health facility in a functional way, where the public health facility has been prepared to receive, counsel, and inform young people age-appropriate information on issues of sexuality, of reproductive health, and counseling, and how to prevent teenage pregnancies.
I think that might actually be more realistic as opposed to waiting to the health centers and health to actually provide these youth-friendly services. Considering that our health service sector already has its issues.
It's overwhelmed, it's true. But these young people spend 60% of their time in schools. So we need to empower the caregivers of these young people in schools, the school teachers, the school nurses, to be able to address the health care problems of these young people where they are, at the points where they are.
But maybe this also calls for harmony between sectoral policies. Because you find that Ministry of Health has adolescent health policy which promotes provision of age-appropriate sexual reproductive information and services. But if you go to the school system, do they have a policy and a framework to support implementation of that policy? So policy harmony across sectors also need to be looked at. Similarly, you find the Customary Marriage Act allows marriage up to 16 years of age. That's
contrary to what we're trying to sort out.
That harmony also affect implementation and execution of policies.
Okay. Is there a relationship between our attitudes, norms, and beliefs and access to contraception?
A lot.
And the reason why I ask this is because I'm thinking, if I'm a teenager, ideally I'm not expected to be having sex at that age. So how easy is it for me to actually walk into a health center and access
that's exactly true. People are so biased about teens having sex. We know the statistics show us that the teens are having sex. However, we are afraid to talk about the word sex to them. So again, we are disempowering these teenagers. And then there's a lot of attitudinal attributes to us as healthcare workers, to us as parents, to us as the people who take care of these young people, to the extent that we are even afraid to talk to them about sex and sexuality. So let alone a teenager walking into a health center and asking for contraception. That is a big taboo. But we need to change people's attitudes. We need to empower the young people to make the right choices.
Okay.
Actually, to add on Dr. Sabrina's submission, you realize that as parents would want not to hear and to think that our daughters
are having sex.
Yes. But the statistics again shows that the median age at which sex is begun is about 16.7 years, median. But you've seen situations much younger than that.
It's very interesting because last weekend on NTV, Let's Talk, we're talking about having the sex and sexuality conversation with children and teenagers and at what point it should actually start. And there were very interesting views from our viewers, obviously, who were saying the conversation should only start when the children are adolescents.
Not really.
Which is quite late.
No. I think it should start at the time the child starts to become inquisitive. Where do babies come from?
I could give you an example actually when I went on a Sunday to pick my children from a church, I think Watoto North, and then as I was driving home, I was saying, oh, hey, how was the church day? And then my daughter said, oh, Dad, it was fine. They were telling us about menstruation. I said, oh, okay,
in church, that's nice.
In church, that's interesting.
The brother said, oh, no, you weren't doing that. I said, no, it's okay, let us talk about it. I said, what did you learn about menstruation? They said, they told us when you get menstruation, what happens to you, what you need to do to prevent it, how to make your own part. And to me, that was an opening of a conversation with her to talk about such issues. And this is opportunity to be done at home, in the church, like this has been done in
at school,
at school, so that the children are protected all round with this information in the same voice across.
Okay, I would love to keep this conversation going, but our time is fast spent. Thank you so much for coming to join us on NTV Let's Talk. And I hope that we shall see more working together between the ministry and UNFPA and schools and parents and communities to actually address this issue.
With the ministry to develop a curriculum for integrating sexual education in secondary school.
That's
and
great.
hope this will get support of the country, because this will be a sustained and strategic way of making sure young people get this in a consistent and continued basis. Of course, empowerment of girls, putting them in school, retaining them in secondary and tertiary education would be a critical strategic investment.
Thank you very much. And that is a perfect point to end this discussion. Thank you so much for joining.